How's it going, everybody? Zach here with Life Changer. I'm going to read chapter 3 today. Chapter 3 is a really important chapter. It's all about how you live your life. It's all about the patterns that you fall into. It's all about your comfort zones. It's these things that happen in our lives. We don't even realize it's happening. And next thing you know, you're in these patterns that you have no idea you're even in, but they define your life. They define you. They limit you. They cause you to be trapped. And so I want to discuss these. I think everybody discusses a comfort zone in a very shallow manner. We talk about, oh, it's kind of out of my comfort zone. I don't really want to do that. But we don't realize how serious that statement is. We don't realize how profound those comfort zones go into every facet of our existence, every facet of our life, and they really have a restrictive quality if you're not aware of them and making sure that they're not shrinking, because they will shrink. What you're comfortable doing will shrink. Where you're comfortable going will shrink. What you're comfortable eating will shrink. All these things just become more and more limited. And you have to ask yourself, do you want a limited life, or do you want a boundless life without limits? What kind of life do you want? And maybe you're not looking for limitless, but maybe you're looking for more, and which I think almost everyone is. We're all looking for just a little bit more. And maybe it's not more of any particular thing. Maybe it's just a little bit more happiness. There's a little bit more peace. And if we can just be aware of the things that is taking that away from our life, and we can expand upon that, which is those comfort zones, then we can change our lives. We can change how we feel. We can increase the level of happiness that we have. We can increase the level of love in our lives. We can increase the level of comfort that we have in our own skin, because we will become more aware who we are, what we like, what we love, what types of things brings joy, and what types of things does not. So I want to start reading this chapter. It's kind of carries out throughout my whole philosophy, but this is chapter 3, comfort zones. From the time we were born until the day we pass on, one thing that happens to almost all of us is that we form routines in our lives. Within these routines, we decide how our days will play out and how to spend our time. It is through the formation of routines that we develop a small degree of control over our existence. We determine what needs to be done and how to prioritize it. The power of the routine can allow us to make steady progress towards achieving our goals. The establishment of order and structure are essential components in the creation of a plan and its execution. However, these rituals can become so powerful for some that they are almost impossible to break. They slowly limit our abilities to be spontaneous and to try new things. New experiences in our lives are some of the greatest stimulators of change and must not be eliminated or overly suppressed. Unfortunately, for most, this suppression is part of their natural course of personal development. What we do becomes more defined, and what we will allow ourselves to do becomes more restricted. As this happens, we slowly begin to develop our personal comfort zones. As I said before, rituals are powerful tools, but comfort zones can become traps that confine our reality and limit our growth. The saddest part about comfort zones is that they are slowly and subtly developed. The saddest part about comfort zones is that they slowly and subtly develop over time. Many of us never realize they even exist. These comfort zones naturally become significant defining aspects of who we are and what kind of life we live. Because of these slow transitions, most people never even realize that they have become limited in what they allow themselves to experience in their life. You may not be able to see grass grow, but rest assured it is growing, and if not attended to, will undoubtedly become out of control. This slow but steady type of progression can create security up to a point, but eventually it will become suffocating. However, in our minds, we are masters of our universe and ahead of the curve, entirely justified with deep roots in our own personal belief system. As this security sets in, change becomes nonsense, ridiculous, or even terrifying for some. The individuals that fall prey to this process are not at fault. They are merely a victim of human nature. We have within us a deep-rooted desire for safety and structure. These instincts, handed down from our much less fortunate ancestors, were the only reason that most of them survived. Survival and reproduction used to be the highest goals that most people could aspire to in their life. Luckily, for most of us, this currently is not the case. As a species, we have become extremely capable of survival, and yet we are still so consumed by these instincts that many of us miss out on the most significant advantages of our time. We miss out on the chance to thrive. There is a term called cognitive dissonance that describes what happens in our minds when we are confronted with something that challenges our belief systems. It is the mental conflict that occurs when new information contradicts our personal beliefs or assumptions. The concept was introduced in the late 1950s by psychologist Leon Festinger. He and later researchers showed that when confronted with challenging new information, most people seek to preserve their current understanding of the world by rejecting, explaining away, avoiding the new information, or by simply convincing themselves that no conflict even exists. Our minds have this mechanism that for some reason immediately causes us to resist aspects of change, agents of change. We almost instantaneously begin to refute something new and rationalize away the need for any new idea that might have an impact on our well-developed and structured lives and belief systems. We have all seen this happen to others, and whether we want to admit it or not, we are guilty of cognitive dissonance ourselves. The scary thing about this is that if we are not consciously aware of this phenomenon, it will slowly limit our ability to grow and prosper. Cognitive dissonance will work its magic to create one comfort zone after another. Sorry for the stutters, guys. On to the next paragraph. I need to make a disclaimer. I'm not saying there is something wrong with finding comfort in the lives we live. What I'm trying to make you aware of is that if we allow it, a closed-minded life will cause these comfort zones to slowly but inevitably shrink. These shrinking comfort zones are heavily protected by sayings like "you can't teach an old dog a new trick," "that's not how I was raised," or "I just don't do that." As ironclad as these statements or excuses can seem, they are mostly just forms of vocalized fear created by slowly shrinking comfort zones. My wife introduced me to a saying a while back that I completely agree with. Life begins outside of your comfort zone. This is so true. If you think back to the more memorable moments of your life, what you may realize is that the majority of the most outstanding memories were created when you were outside of your usual routine. Average days become so simple that they fade away into those gray areas of our memory banks that never warrant reflection or consideration. True stimulation is always found on the outskirts or entirely outside of our comfort zones. The only reason our species can exist to the degree that we do is because of the people who are willing to step out of their comfort zone and make changes. It is the accumulation of these changes that have brought about empires, industries, philosophies, and religions, none of which were forged overnight. It was one small step after another that expanded the comfort zone of man out of their caves and into the brilliant world that we currently inhabit. You must apply the same philosophy, the same one that has slowly molded and changed our species, and allow it to bring about change and personal growth in your own life. Don't expect to make one step out of your comfort zone and start seeing rapid transformative effects on your life. However, do plan to have a new story to tell or to acquire more wisdom to pass on. Realize that in the same way our species has grown, so shall you grow. One important thing to realize is that all types of comfort zones can create limitations in our lives. Many of them are handed down from generation to generation. This makes them so much harder to acknowledge, let alone step out of and change. So only through thorough self-analysis can we begin to open our eyes and merely peek through the keyhole at a new version of our lives, a version without limits. In the following paragraphs, I will discuss some of the possible areas in your life where you may have comfort zones. Some of these may be limiting your joy in life, but some of them could very well be killing you. The first comfort zone I would like to discuss is of the physical nature. These dictate the mindset that we allow to guide our view of our bodily health. If there is anywhere we will establish comfort zones, it's here. So easily we rationalize our dietary, exercise, and health-related decision-making. Most of us do so in such an extreme way that we allow for lifestyles that put us at risk of life-threatening disease or injury. The sad part is most of us know exactly what we are doing, but for some reason continue to make exceptions and carry on as if we are ignorant. We do this with the thought that firmly planted in the back of our minds that one day I'll change. Unfortunately for most, one day usually comes too late. Our physical comfort zones become so defined that we will even defy what we know to be true to avoid the uncomfortable nature of change. It is here where you must be willing to accept fact over opinion and embrace the changes you know to be true. It is here that you must be willing to accept fact over opinion and embrace the changes you know to be necessary. Working in the physical therapy field has exposed me to just about every excuse in the book. One of the best is I can't. I have a rule. The rule states that if you're going to say I can't, then you have to finish it with the statement yet. That puts a whole new spin on the mindset. People are too quick to rule things out when those things may threaten their precious comfort zones. As a species, we tend to focus on our strength and starve our weaknesses. This type of practice creates an imbalance in any system you place it in. These imbalances eventually cause our weaknesses to become disabilities, and that has adverse effects on the entire system. You must learn to focus on your weaknesses and turn them into strengths. If you do this, it will help you to establish balance in your life. Regardless of whether we are talking about changing our diets or changing our exercise routines, we must be aware of our ironclad excuse and realize that they are like a house of cards, steady when left alone, but easily destroyed when action is taken against them. The comfort zone that I seem to personally struggle with the most as I age is social comfort zones. These dictate who we spend time with and where and when, and we will allow for our social lives and where we will allow our social lives to happen. For most of us, these tend to shrink significantly as we age. Trust can be so hard to establish later in life. This lack of trust can be a substantial limiter on whom we allow ourselves to be exposed to and who we inevitably form relationships with. Don't forget, you may have a best friend out there that you have not met yet, or perhaps a husband, a wife, or even a mentor. I understand that being in the presence of groups of strangers or even friends can be serious sources of anxiety for many, but we cannot allow this mental anticipation to restrict our exposure to the countless blessings that a new and positive relationship can bring into our lives. Social anxiety seems to be such a limiting factor for so many in this day of talk to text and video chat. Real interaction and the type of intimacy that comes with it are irreplaceable. As previously stated, this is an area of weakness for me. But I have the knowledge of what is going to happen if I avoid this weakness, and that is the very key to my social salvation. The knowledge. We must accept that as time passes, our social comfort zones will naturally shrink. Once this is understood and accepted, we can begin to make a change. We can act preventatively. One of the main characteristics that separates us from the animals is our ability to step outside of the natural order of things and consciously make positive changes in our lives. I'm going to read that one again. One of the main characteristics that separates us from the animals is our ability to step outside of the natural order of things and consciously make positive changes in our lives. It doesn't get any more true than that. One of the most powerful testaments to our deep need for social interaction can be found in our prison system. Socially, this environment seems like it would be about as bad as it gets. However, take a person, separate them from their friends and family, and lock them up in a fortress that is filled with nothing but the most psychologically damaged criminals society has to offer, and the worst thing you can do is place them in solitary confinement. Even in that environment, social interaction is necessary. Fortunately for most, this prison existence is never experienced. Most of us are free to do what we will, but some of us let ourselves forget the prison cell that can be constructed within the mind. It is a most private place that can be more restrictive than any physical cell. Unfortunately, there are millions of free, mentally stable, productive members of society that have all but placed themselves in a solitary confinement-like state by simply allowing their social comfort zones to shrink over time. Remember, life requires much more space, not only in the physical world, but more importantly, in the mind. You must open your mind to new ideas and your days to new experiences. We only have so many days to live, after all. You know that, right? I have saved spiritual comfort zones for last because I believe this to be the area that delivers the most substantial level of anxiety when the limits of this comfort zone are reached. Not only are these comfort zones passed from generation to generation, but there are usually perceived consequences associated with a personalized opinion regarding one's spiritual belief system in the area. Conformity is pushed in these areas with more zeal than any other, and yet anxiety and unrest regarding spiritual matters seem to be at cataclysmic levels across our species. The need to connect leads us to the herd of religion. Once heavily involved, what is usually found is a social acceptance without spiritual satisfaction. In my personal experience, it is the connections with God outside of my comfort zones that have offered me the most enlightenment. Just remember the golden rule and treat others how you wish to be treated. If you practice this, you may find that you judge your own inquisitive nature much less harshly. If you live in this world, you have either been exposed to or have been involved in an organized religion, each with its own set of beliefs and practices. There are things we have all heard of, such as fasting, meditation, prayer, chanting, focusing on skill, vows of silence, or confession that all boast the ability to offer a closer relationship with our Creator. But even with this knowledge, so many of us never even attempt a new approach to a more spiritually fulfilling life. We don't use these unfamiliar practices because they require us to step out of our spiritual comfort zone. Almost every faith this world has to offer teaches that true faith requires action. So many religious doctrines have been manipulated to teach that this action comes in a more physical manner, when the truth is, as I see it, is that true spiritual action takes place in the mind. It has to happen here first. It is the stepping out of the comfort zone and into the unknown where we find a deeper understanding of God. This is the realization that leads to actively seeking. Does your spiritual comfort zone have you in a series of never-ending repetition that leaves you with a sense of wanting? Is this sense of wanting your greatest secret? The answers you seek lie just outside of where you currently allow yourself to go spiritually. Just outside of your comfort zones. As the Bible states, seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. This is how we seek. This is how we knock. By stepping outside of our comfort zone and welcoming the unknown, we allow for spiritual growth. Change must take place for there to be change. There is no arguing this point. There are two basic types of change. One is good, growth-stimulating, progressive change. This type will open your life up to new opportunities and ways of thought that are without limits. The other is sad, limiting, reductive change. This type will swallow you into its belly and hold you there. It will hold you there until the day comes when it's too late, and you can only reflect on a life not lived. Step back today and identify your comfort zones. Identify those ironclad excuses. Stop living in a world that gets smaller with age, and stop wondering about concepts and places you never investigate or visit. Step out. Discover a reality filled with new experiences, people, and ideas. Make your comfort zone be one that you're in when you are being the type of person you want to be and living the kind of life that you have always wanted to live. I'm going to read that again. Discover a reality filled with new experiences, people, and ideas. Make your comfort zone be one that you're in when you're being the type of person you want to be and living the kind of life that you have always wanted to live. And that's it for comfort zones. I hope that that triggered something in you. It definitely triggers something in me every time I read it, and they're my words. It just goes to show that deeper reflection, meditation upon concepts, stepping outside of your comfort zone mentally when you think you fully understand something and taking it on in a different way, thinking about it from a different perspective, looking at it and thinking, what am I not considering? What change in thinking can be more beneficial to my life? And if you can do that on a consistent basis in any different area of your life that you consider yourself to be comfortable in, or areas that you consider yourself to be uncomfortable in that maybe you avoid, approach them, interact with them, consider them, find your comfort zones, challenge those borders, grow those borders so that you can have a bigger, broader, more experience-filled life. I want you to do it because I want you to be happy. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time for Chapter 4. If you stuck around through the whole chapter and are listening to me now, please comment below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the chapter. If you have any comments or any questions or anything like that, I'll be more than happy to answer. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you next time on the Life Changer series.